Welcome back to Jail Psychologist. This week I want to talk about Medicaid work requirements and their impact on people with mental illness, jails, and taxpayers. So, a little background information to start. In July of 2025, the President signed legislation mandating that U.S. states implement mandatory work requirements for Medicaid recipients. In layman's terms, anyone on Medicaid who wants to stay on Medicaid is going to need to prove that they're working or volunteering for at least 80 hours per month. Advocates of this policy argue, and you'll see why this is ironic later, that this change will curb waste, save money, and increase employment. Now, when a government makes big changes to public safety nets like this, it can be difficult to anticipate the impact it'll actually have. But in this case, we have a real-world example that we can review to see how Medicaid work requirements impact people. In 2018, the state of Arkansas enacted work requirements for their Medicaid program. Multiple studies on Arkansas's program, which I will link in the description, indicated that not only did work requirements not increase employment, they effectively kicked around 18,000 citizens off Medicaid. So in effect, work requirement was a euphemism for reducing Medicaid enrollment. Now, you might be thinking, I'm fine with that. If people don't want to work, then they shouldn't be getting free health insurance. But this perspective is short-sighted, and I'm going to explain why. There are a lot of people on Medicaid who have a serious mental illness like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. These people are able to function in the community as long as they're getting their medication and have support from family and friends. However, just because they can function with treatment, that doesn't mean that they're functional enough to be employed. So when Medicaid work requirements go into effect, these people will effectively lose their health insurance. Antipsychotic medications, which were provided for free or maybe with a $5 copay on Medicaid, could easily cost over $1,000 a month without insurance. Most people on Medicaid don't have an extra $1,000 lying around, and especially not on a monthly basis. Now, I want to pause for a moment to anticipate an objection some people might have. That is, Medicaid work requirements have exemptions for people who are on Social Security disability. And that is true. But the reality is that the vast majority of people with serious mental illness are not registered or approved for Social Security disability. It's arguably pretty difficult to get approved for SSDI even if you have a serious illness, but table that discussion for another day. So you've got a lot of poor people with serious mental illness who are being kept afloat in society by their mental health medications, which are being subsidized by Medicaid. When work requirements effectively kick them off Medicaid, they're going to stop taking their medication because they can't afford it. And what happens next? You're going to see a bunch of people who were stable in the community experience a surge in psychotic and manic behavior. And we all know where that ends. In arrest and in jail. And once these people are in jail, they have a constitutional right to health care. And remember what we talked about in episode 11. Jails don't get negotiated drug prices and have to provide people with care at monopoly prices, which means that those antipsychotics that taxpayers were wasting money on at $100 a month through Medicaid are now being purchased retail by the jail for $2,000 a month. And on top of this, you've forced someone who was being housed by family members in the community for free to now be housed in the jail to the tune of $100 or more per day at taxpayer expense. So let's do some quick math. For someone like I described, of which there are hundreds of thousands by the way, Medicaid work requirements save taxpayers $100 a month at the state level by kicking the patient off Medicaid, but then increase costs at the county level by about $5,000 a month. And guess what? That's your money. As a taxpayer, it doesn't matter whether you pay for this with money that you have to give to the state or money that you have to give to the local government. You're paying for it either way. Wouldn't you rather pay the lower price? So to summarize, when Medicaid work requirements go into effect January of 2027, what you're going to see is no significant change in employment, but a lot of people losing their health insurance, more arrests for people with mental illness, increases in the jail population, fiscal and liability dumping from the state onto local governments, and a dramatic increase in overall cost to the taxpayer. This is a sad misallocation of resources which we will eventually have to roll back. It's just a question of how much money we're going to waste until everyone else figures that out. That's all the time we have for our session today. I'll see you next week.